The FDA just signaled a shift on how certain peptides may be handled soon, and it could open the door for wider use in clinics. If you've been offered one or you think you might be soon, this is the episode you need to hear first. One of the most popular peptides being used right now has reports of severe allergic reactions, including anaphylaxis. Another one used for tanning has been linked to melanoma and seizures. And despite all of that, both are still being sold online and used. I'm Dr. Kate D, founder and medical director of Medspa. And this is Medspa Confidential, where we expose the risks, the red flags, and the outright illegal practices happening inside med spas right now, because you deserve to know the truth before you book. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Furhan Qureshi. He's an internal medicine physician and med spa owner practicing outside Washington, D.C. And he's been carefully observing the peptide conversation from both sides of the exam table. You'll find out exactly what the FDA changed and why it matters for anyone considering these treatments. You'll learn why most popular peptide right now still has no completed human trial data behind it, even as providers gear up to offer it. You'll hear which peptide I believe no one should be using. Stay until the end because we break down what legal actually means here and why the answer isn't as clear as you think. Dr. Qureshi, thanks so much for joining me on this great topic.
Thank you for having me.
So first of all, for our audience who really may not understand the definition, let's define what peptide is. Do you want to take a stab at that?
Peptides are essentially building blocks of proteins, and they help build into something. What's happened is our body has them naturally occurring, and ever since the success of the whole GLP-1 craze, there's a rise of people using very similar molecules to the ones we typically have, and the thinking is if we increase more of it, just like we did with GLP-1, do we get an improvement of some aspect of our functions? That's pretty much what it is.
Yeah, and I mean, people should understand a lot of our body is made out of protein and peptides. So muscles protein, collagen's protein, and then of course a lot of hormones are proteins. And so a peptide's really just like a short chain protein, or some of them are even just single amino acids, but usually there are at least a couple of amino acids stuck together. So let's frame the controversy here. Okay, so there are peptides that essentially drugs that are FDA approved, and we're really not talking about those today, although we'll probably touch on some of the weight loss drugs that are so popular. But really we're talking about peptides that are just exciting and haven't really been studied, maybe some of them like in animals. Okay. And then they were basically, but the FDA banned them a few years ago. And then just recently in the last couple of days, it said they're going to reinstate the ability to compound these things. So can you talk about what the controversy is and what's going on, why it's so crazy right now?
When somebody says peptide, the first thing they think about is Wegovy or GLP-1. But the story of peptides goes way longer in history than that. I mean, the Soviets were testing peptides back during the Cold War. They were taking molecules from the body, these peptides, and studying, if they could synthesize more of them, what could happen. In fact, most of these peptide and longevity practices are citing those old Soviet studies to promote the use of them in the world of wellness and longevity. But I guess in recent times, what's happened is there are lots of peptides. There are so many peptides that it could take hours and we're not done talking about them. There's well over 600 known peptides and potentially more that we don't even know about. The human body is like the ocean. There's still mysteries out there that we're still digging up. AI is helping us find it, but there's a lot of stuff we don't know. In the world of peptides, there are certain ones that have become very popular and are getting a lot of buzz. And I'm sure you've heard of, one of the more famous ones, BPC 157. It's rumored that Tom Brady himself was taking it while he was playing in his later career.
Let's just talk about that one in particular, since that's the most popular one, and there's actually some data on that one. I do know that that's been banned from professional sports by the doping, the anti-doping agency, right? If that rumor's true, that's kind of bad for Tom Brady.
He's retired now.
Well, he's retired now, but like, what are they going to take away his Super Bowl rings if they find out? I don't know. But so talk a little bit about what that one is and what it does, or what people think it does, and why everybody or so many people are taking it.
So supposedly what it is basically, this is a peptide that's been involved in repair processes. There are people who have chronic osteoarthritis, ankle injuries. Supposedly what it does is it helps you heal faster. So if you're somebody who has tennis elbow and someone injects you there, you may get better. Now, I want to caution this by saying these statements have not been confirmed by the FDA nor endorsed. These are just very limited trials and kind of hearsay, but that's kind of what's going on. And yeah, I just looked it up. You're right. Actually, the WADA did ban it for doping, which is interesting.
Well, that one in particular, that one's derived from like stomach acid, right? Or stomach wall. I don't actually know how they got it, but it's not intuitive how you would develop that one.
We're in a very complex world right now. Peptides are blending in the world of supplements, which is blending into the world of therapeutic and FDA guideline and policy. And now the poor WADA, it used to be easy, like don't shoot EPO because you're gonna, inappropriately create more red blood cells and have an unfair advantage. Now these guys also have to now step in and decide in this gray world of peptides, what should we ban? I mean, it's hard because, right, like doesn't creatine and whey powder, if you take it while working out, give you a boost? WADA says, yeah, but it's fair because it's not manipulating the body the way EPO did, which is what got Lance Armstrong in trouble. That's what invented the world of doping. It's just challenging because there's that fine line. So BPC 157 is now in that category, and I don't know. It's just hard to determine which one becomes doping and which one isn't, and they're going to have to constantly
Yeah.
offer guidelines on it.
Well, it's interesting because that one in particular, if it does what people say that it does, it helps healing, right? It's anti-inflammatory. It helps healing, I guess. Again, no human studies proving that. But if it does that really increase athletic performance? But we're not here to debate that because, we just know it's on the list. You're not supposed to use that. But since that's the most common one, the one that's most popular, so that has been spreading like wildfire amongst all these people who are into peptides. So when we're talking about peptides today, we're talking about injectable peptides. So we're not in the world of supplements, which are things you can eat, which are generally not covered by the FDA. So the FDA only governs drugs that you can eat or a pill if it is claiming to alter human tissue or change human function, basically to treat disease. So supplements in general are not considered drugs, and the FDA doesn't cover those. So we're not talking about that today. And today we're talking about injectable peptides that are clearly medicines. They're being injected into the human body. Their purpose is to change human function. So they are for sure drugs. And so the FDA does have purview over them. And the problem is that none of these peptides has been FDA approved, meaning they haven't been studied in humans. There's no data to say, yep, it does this or that enough to get approval. There's no company, a drug company, for instance, usually would pay for those trials. That hasn't happened.
There were some. There were some.
But it hasn't gone through FDA approval. So there are some studies.
Correct.
Most of them animal.
But there were some humans, but they were very limited. They were underpowered. They were inconclusive, or they were mixed. They never finished. They basically started, but they never finished. Like ADOC is one of those diet ones. This is popular now, but it was studied. It was a smaller trial, but it was going through the FDA trials, and the manufacturer abandoned it. They didn't find a significant weight loss, so they abandoned it. But now it's cool because all peptides seem to be cool. I think the greater problem that we have now is we're generalizing. What has happened is because GLP-1s were so awesome, we have now reached a conclusion as a society that all peptides are awesome. More must be the answer. They can do no wrong. And I don't want to say that the GLP-1s are a one-hit wonder. I don't want to believe that. I would like to believe that there are other wondrous hits out there. But we've entered a very dangerous realm where on the one hand, my feeling is that the FDA has been too slow to study it or to encourage study of it. But then on the other hand, you have a world of social media where all these, self-professed health coaches are making very bold claims that you have to, take this peptide X. Since I've been taking it, they're making these claims like I'm running faster, I've lost this much weight. And that's not a trial. That's not a controlled trial. There's no control. There's no variable. So, I mean,
Well, and interestingly, of course, as physicians, we can't claim that medicines or, injectables do something that they don't do. We could lose our license. Whereas these,
correct.
Kind of online gurus, they're not going to lose. They don't have a license to lose. They can kind of say, whatever their opinion is, and nobody holds them to any science. So what I'm trying to do, in the podcast is to sort out for people where there is some science, why this is happening. Because if millions of people are taking these injectables and they talk about, peptide stacks and stacking, these 3 peptides in this way, and it boosts your, well-being and your athletic performance, and you have all these people doing it, that it probably does something. It might have hidden dangers that they're just not talking about, or cancer that they'll get in 15 years that they don't know about yet. I mean, that's all very possible. There's one peptide called melanotan 2 that is probably the most scary one. And that one, I'm just going to say right up front, nobody should use that one. Okay. So that one people have used for tanning. So to get tanner skin, but also for libido and some other things. But it has been linked to melanoma and seizures, and actually prolonged erections for like priapism. So in general, that one's pretty terrible. But people are out there using it, and we'll show some pictures of that on our YouTube version of this, because it's pretty crazy how ultra deeply tan these people can get on that. But super dangerous. But so I really would like to kind of tease out for people like why it's interesting to start with, like which peptides are interesting to you, which ones do you hope get studied. Once the FDA does allow compounding, are you going to use them in your practice, or are you going to watch and see what happens? Like, what do you think?
These are great questions. So let's just be clear. The most popular ones are not new. BPC 1% didn't happen a year ago. Mm-hmm. A lot of these peptides, especially that are on the category 2 list, they've been around for decades. We should probably start from where how we got here. Peptides are not new. They've been around for a long time. They've been studied for a long time. The Soviets did a lot of research in it, in certain peptides like C-LANC and C-MANC. Well, and what has happened now is GLP-1s have been all the rage. They've been wildly successful in terms of both weight loss. In fact, last year was the first year in the last 30 years that Americans collectively lost weight. Every year, the percentages were increasing of obesity. This is the first time in American history in the last 30 years that the U.S. public has gradually lost weight. Not only that, a lot of other good things happen. Fast food stocks collapsed because, if you're on a GLP-1, you're going to feel sick eating a pizza or a taco. You're already slowing down. People ask me, how does GLP-1 work? If they're in Northern Virginia, I tell them, well, a GLP-1 is like a pharmacological muscle. It's basically slowing down your GI tract, right? When you take it, your body is in absorption mode. It slows down your GI tract. If you eat something highly, preserved or something that's not natural, it slows down your GI tract further. So it's like you're worsening I-95 traffic. We have I-95, which is our most feared highway. It's always like slowed down. It's very famous. So I tell people it's like you're giving your GI tract, I-95 traffic on purpose, because if you slow it down, you can't put anything in. So you'll back up. So if you're somebody who ate, 5 or 6 big slices of pizza, you're lucky if you do 1 slice because you just feel sick. You can't do it. So, we learned over the years, not only were they losing weight because they're not eating this bad food, other things happened. They're not drinking alcohol as much. Alcohol sales have tanked, which is now leading to the rise of non-alcoholic spirits. In fact, I'm actually drinking one of these adaptogen drinks myself. I'm drinking it right now. I offer them in my practice. I can now successfully offer spirits to my clients that are non-alcoholic. And they're actually potentially healthy for them, but they're not bad. There's no sugars, there's no preservatives, there's no artificial, these are kind of naturally, health focused drinks. So fast food stocks have dropped, alcohol stocks have dropped. In fact, the alcohol companies themselves are now going into non-alcoholic drinks, which is a good thing.
So there's benefits to each person. There's less arthritis. There are fewer knee replacements. There's less kidney disease because there's less diabetes. Like there's just a ton of advantages that are happening because of GLP-1s. And I will say that, when GLP-1s first came on the scene, once they became FDA approved a few years ago, and everyone and their dog was jumping on that, I was pretty skeptical at the time. I'm like, oh God, one more weight loss drug. But it turns out to be just incredibly different from every single thing before. So really, I'm really, I don't want to discount any of these things because could any of them become the next, Ozempic or Zepbound? Possibly, yes. I mean, obviously we need a lot more studies. But so I'm just curious, besides that one BPC 157 or 157, there are the other ones that are the most popular that I could find are the growth hormone ones. So CJC 1295 and then ipamorelin or I don't even know how to pronounce that, ipamorelin. Yeah. So what do you think about those? Those are, basically stimulate your own growth hormone in your body. And I worry about that also for the possible effect of causing a neoplasm or making a neoplasm worse. But what do you think about those?
Yeah, I mean, the American consumer's gotten smarter. They know now about, obesity and fat, but they're also worried about visceral fat. Visceral fat's quite dangerous. You mentioned earlier a good point about the decline of, arthritis and stuff like that. The public should know that fat is not a stationary thing. Fat is not stuffing. There used to be this belief that what is fat? Oh, it's like padding. No, it's not padding actually. Fat are glandular. They do secrete their own hormones, for example, that they find, especially belly fat, that secretes, certain hormones that interact insulin, which is how type 2 diabetes seems to happen. It's a resistant diabetes, right? Classical diabetes type 1 is where your pancreas doesn't make insulin. The type 2 came out that it's making insulin, but it's stuck. It's not effective. So back to the history of GLP-1s, it was more in modern times that they got approved for obesity, but they've been around for longer. They've been, back when I was in residency, we were using the Victoza was the thing. Victoza was being injected to sensitize the body to its own insulin and help reduce the sugar, the glucose levels. It was later they found that these weight loss happened. But to your question, the public is extremely interested about longevity and improving their long-term health. Back in the day, we were fighting to fight disease and live longer. We've kind of accepted now that we're going to live longer, but we're good at it now. We want to live better, and that's where longevity's become all the craze. So that's kind of what's happening there. The most popular peptides happen to be ones mostly associated with aging, whether it's erectile dysfunction or especially pain. Pain is a big one. So that's why BPC 157 is so hot, TB 500 is so hot. There are people out there who have chronic osteoarthritis, and by injecting it, some of them, whoever they are finding improvements in their functional status. They're having less pain. They're able to go for their walks again, do gardening, and they're getting their lives back. But on the flip side, there are some who suffered. If you look at the online blogosphere, you'll see some people write stuff like, "Oh, be careful which peptides you get. I took this one peptide I got after dinner, and I had anaphylaxis." And actually, that's why we have a problem right now. There are about 20 peptides that the FDA put on the category to do not compound list, which include, unfortunately, BPC 157, TB 500. There were case reports out there of people potentially getting anaphylactic, severe allergic reactions, and the FDA thought, "Oh, this is dangerous. Put them on that list." So there's a list. There's 20 compounds on this list. The FDA says you cannot compound them for human use. They're research use only. So if I'm in a lab and I'm doing a research project on rats, yeah, I can have some pharmacy or some lab synthesize it from doing research. What I'm not allowed to do is suddenly take those peptides that were for research use only and then commercially or even medically handed out to a patient. But of
Right.
course, you and I know, you and I both know that's happening right now.
Yes.
A lot of physicians are doing it. Not just physicians, a lot of health gurus and health coaches are now in this business, and the internet is run amok with claims of, you know, I couldn't walk because of my severe back pain, but thanks to this peptide that was injected in my back, I'm now walk. There's no way to verify these claims. There's no
Right.
verification. I mean,
Right.
maybe it did work. Maybe it did work. Good. Yeah,
But that also could have been a bot. Like it's impossible to know, right?
Plus, but also, we didn't study it, right? So we don't
Yeah.
know who it's going to work for. See, patient selection is key, right? That's how we have so many antibiotics. That's how we have Z-Pak, doxycycline. Maybe for my sore throat, amoxicillin just doesn't work, but I don't know, clindamycin does. So we haven't done enough studies to know overall who it works for, who's a good patient selection, who does it work for, who should we avoid? Does having lupus contraindicate you from getting BPC 157? I'm just throwing it out there. We don't know those things. It's a wild west, and I wish, I mean, at least the Soviets are researching it. I wish we did it too, and we have not. So now what's happening is a lot of these health coaches now are taking it among themselves to recommend something based on research 50 years ago in the USSR, that something works, and I don't know.
From the point of view of a patient, and I'll just use myself as an example, right? So I have a new back pain thing and a new disc, and it's awful, right? And I'm like, wait, I'm super, healthy and active, and I ski and I bike and I hike, and I'm like, oh my God. And so honestly, if I didn't know anything about medicine, if somebody said, ooh, there's this peptide that could maybe make that go away, like super, I would try. I mean, I'd try if I thought it was safe, I'd try it because I'm like, well, I would try anything rather than have back surgery. I don't want to have back surgery. But as a physician, I can tell you, I am scared out of my mind to put something inside my body that I don't really know where it came from. It could kill you. So anaphylaxis is when you have a severe life-threatening allergy to something and you don't know what's in that vial because God knows where it came from. It could come from China with all kinds of contaminants in it, or it could be which would make it much more likely to be you'd be allergic to it. And then also, these vials that come from wherever, a lot of times are contaminated with bacteria and other bugs. So I've interviewed people who've had really bad infections from these kinds of things where it was ordered off the internet. So you have to know where it's coming from. So I honestly think that I think it's going to make it safer. So the FDA coming along now and saying, hey, in a few months, we're going to allow compounding pharmacies to compound it. You'll at least know that it's not contaminated, hopefully anyway, it's not contaminated with some foreign substance or whatever. So the risk of anaphylactic shock or infection, I hope, would go way down.
So anaphylaxis can happen to anybody. You don't know until it happens, and that's the problem now, right? What if shrimp scampi? I had it at Olive Garden. I thought it was delicious, but you had an anaphylactic shock. Does that mean the government should ban shrimp scampi for everybody? So we're in a very So we're entering a world now where we have to we have to do more research. You see, ABC 157 is on that list. Something bad happened that led for it to be on that list. We need to study. We need to study, like, why did it end up on that list, and why are so many people who are using it, I guess technically it's illegally that they're using it when that's not supposed to be. Why are they reporting so many positive side effects? This is where there has to be a better job researching it. There should be some kind of public-private partnership between the government and the other, enthusiasts. I wish, I don't want us to lower our research or trial standards, but we must find a way to improve our knowledge about, how these things work, who it helps. If someone did have an anaphylactic, okay, good, let's study that person. Why did they have it? Did they have an autoimmune condition? Who was that person?
The problem is first of all, it is much less likely to have an anaphylactic reaction to a peptide that's 3 amino acids in length versus something that is in a vial that God knows what's in it. It could be anything in that vial. So something where you don't know where it came from, you're much more likely to have
There's
a
no
problem.
Standardized process.
There's no.
That's the problem, right? There's no.
Yes.
The BPC 1% from my pharmacy A might be a little bit different than the BPC 1% from your pharmacy B.
Yes.
They all have different additives. The standards are not the same, and that's the problem. Should we uniform the standard? What should the standards be? Compounding pharmacies don't have the same quality control standards that these larger, like Merck and Bayer, like those guys have. They don't have the same quality control. It's like McDonald's versus Steve's Pizzeria. I'm just making one up.
So actually the FDA regulations are different for 503A and 503B pharmacies. So, and that's kind of, maybe a little more esoteric. I do write about that in my book, but basically 503B is making a kind of compounded drug that is available for purchase on a larger scale, and then that doctor can dispense it. Okay. Whereas a 50, that's something maybe most people are not familiar with. 503A compounding pharmacies are the ones where you probably know about because your doctor could have prescribed you something and it was in your name only, and it was specific for you, and it was compounded for you at a particular place. And that compounding pharmacy, usually a local place in your, neighborhood.
Doesn't have to be. They can be mail ordered, but 503A, the patient has direct access to.
Yes, and the difference as far as the regulations are massive. So a 503B is really held to the same standards as Merck or Pfizer, whereas a 503A is absolutely not. And there's way less into that. So there are way more problems, incidents and bad outcomes from the 503A pharmacies. And there have been a number of famous cases of that over the years, but just to, separate those two things. I'm welcoming this in some way, in that I think that it's safer to get it from one of these compounding pharmacies than it would be to order it off the internet from China. So for me, that's like one step.
Well, my position, I don't think A or B or C even matter. These things matter because right now the FDA has this list of 20 peptides. They said do not compound these and don't give it to people. These are strictly for research. And what's happening right now is there are 503As who are inappropriately, they're straight up breaking the law.
They're doing it anyway. Yeah.
They're doing it and they're sending it to the consumer, and they're mislabeling the packages by crossing out the research use only and saying, oh, it's for physician use. And so far, I haven't heard of any major, I think they're just getting warning letters from the FDA. They're not really enforcing them. The liability remains high on the part of the prescriber of these that they have a liability involved in this. So,
well, I think the liability, so as a physician, you can prescribe, it's really not really legal to prescribe drugs that are not FDA approved. But that in and of itself isn't 100% proof of malpractice. So let's say you prescribe something, one of these things, it's not FDA approved, someone has a bad reaction and they sue you for malpractice. You may or may not lose that.
But the caveat here is the FDA said, don't do it, right? Those 20 peptides, they said, don't do it. So for example, if there was some mystical drug in Norway that, treats, rheumatoid arthritis, but it's in Norway, the FDA didn't make a comment because they don't even know about it. Could I use it here? I mean, probably not. I wouldn't prescribe something that's outside. But the thing is, that's different. That's your judgment. That's you saying as a practitioner. Look, I've been in Norway and I personally tried this drug. I think it's going to help my patient, and that's one thing. But what's not? But if the FDA explicitly says, hey, we don't want this is the law or this is the rule. Do not do this, and you do it. That's a problem.
So now we're going from the FDA saying don't do it to the FDA now saying, as of in a few months, they just made this announcement in the last 2 days that they're going to put those, I think it's all 20, but don't quote me on that.
But there's going to be in waves. So the first wave is going to be 12, and then there's a second wave coming later.
And then they will be allowed, so compounding pharmacies will be allowed to compound them. And so at that point, they will still not be FDA approved drugs, but they won't be FDA banned drugs. So we now have gone from super duper illegal to only maybe mildly illegal. I'm not totally clear on that. I just know that as a physician, I don't want to put my license on the line for something that, could get me in trouble.
But also, you do want to help your patients, right?
I do. And it's tempting to want to take something if it's going to make my back pain go away.
Correct. So this is why we're talking about it right now. Let's just admit a fact out loud that we're not ready to admit. We're out of ideas. I mean, Celebrex, Vioxx was the last big thing that was out there, and then of course narcotics, which we're running away from now. When it comes to like living better, the top complaint for everyone is pain. That just happens. Osteoarthritis. These things, they're not inevitable. We need something to make our patients happy. We want I'm sure you and I both want them to live their life to the fullest. Just because you're 60 doesn't mean you can't go gardening anymore. That's not an excuse. Tom Cruise is still jumping out of airplanes in his movies.
Is he really doing that?
Well, no, yeah, he was. It was the most recent
movie. For all those
movies.
He is.
Oh yeah, it was the most recent Mission Impossible. I saw the video. He was hanging out of the plane. And I'm like, my God, I'm in those days I was 30. I was 38. I'm like, I'm in pain just brushing my teeth. What's happening is a lot of these treatments and longevity treatments were only accessible to the very super uber wealthy, and they were happy to take the risk to do it because they want to. We're about to now make it more accessible to the public, but and that's why we are where we are. As far as FDA approved treatments go, we only have so much for pain. Mobic, aspirin, Loxicam, and then we can go to narcotics if you'd like. Those are there. We know what those can do.
And surgery, which most of us want to avoid.
Oh man, those are not guaranteed outcomes.
Yes.
The orthopedic or spine guy will tell you, hey, I am not making any guarantees. Because that's true. They can make.
And then, of course, there are some treatments that for a long time have been treated as fringy that have now become mainstream like PRP. So now, that's actually covered by insurance and Medicare now. PRP injections for joints. That there's actually enough data after so many decades of doing that, and that could help. It could potentially stave off having surgery for a few years.
Correct.
And that's how these things happen, right? Like an idea comes, we get access to a peptide or a drug or a treatment, and then we do a trial, and we do enough trials to prove that, okay, it's actually worth doing. I think one of the problems is, we'll never know if something's worth doing. If people just self-inject or do a one-off and outside of a trial, we'll have no idea because we won't know if it's as good as placebo or not as good as placebo or better than placebo.
The problem with pain is a subjective thing.
Yeah.
So, right, cholesterol, we can debate cholesterol easily because cholesterol is something we can objectively measure. I take your blood and I check the cholesterol. Drug A did better than drug B. We're done. So now the question becomes, okay, good. We're talking about pain. How do we know which ones work better than others? Well, this is where the trials will have to get more creative. You can't do a survey because that's not reliable.
It can't be a survey.
How do you feel?
But for example,
but it can be objective. It can be objective.
Yeah.
You can take a trial of people who admit they have back pain and do a pre and post trial test. How many flights of stairs can patient A walk? He can only do 2 steps. He's in severe pain. Okay, now we do 4 weeks of this peptide. Let's try him again. Oh, now he's doing 8 steps. On average, how many? And even that's hard because one guy's back pain may be worse than the other. But there are functional tests that you could do.
For that trial, you would have to compare that to an injection of something that was a placebo. So, for anyone who's watching or in our audience who doesn't understand why that is the case, so the placebo effect, where you take a sugar pill and someone doesn't tell you, okay, it's a sugar pill, do you feel better? And the placebo effect has been shown to be about 30% in just about every trial that's ever been used.
Very powerful.
For instance, there is a trial. So it used to be there were a ton of arthroscopic knee surgeries for knee pain. Yeah. And the orthopedist would go into your knees, scrape away all the extra gradue around your joints, clean it all up, and people would feel better. And then there was a very, very famous trial, this is a while ago now, where they did a whole series of arthroscopic surgeries for knees compared to a fake surgery. Like they would literally spoof a surgery, go in to your, but not do anything, and then come out. So people would not know whether they actually had anything done or not. And so the mock surgery were shown to be exactly the same results as far as pain as the real surgery. And so those surgeries kind of fell out of favor because it was shown like, well, it's not better than placebo. And I think that the problem with all the millions of people saying, hey, this is great, is that you could be just seeing the placebo effect of someone injects themselves and feels like, okay, this is going to make me so much better.
Dr. D, that's the problem with most of these so-called peptide trials. I mean, you and I will never fall for this crap. I mean, those trials, they're surveys. There's like 100 people, which is already underpowered already. And out of the 100, 80 said, I felt great after I did whatever. Well, that's subjective.
Right.
I may have liked, the latest Fast and the Furious. That's my opinion. You may not have. Science is more than that. For the audience, what they should know is whenever you see these drug commercials that are FDA approved, you're going to hear this phrase a lot. You're going to hear, the narrator say something like, so-and-so drug can help you do this. And then he says it in a very fast, slow speech. He says, this was proven in a double-blind random study. That blah, 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 blah. He says it very quickly. That's the subtitle. He's giving you the evidence of why he's saying this drug can have this intended effect. And FDA approved it probably because of that trial. There was a trial. They use that word double-blind a lot. Double-blind meaning both me, the investigator, there's some kind of intervention. I don't know what's in it. I'm just handing it out. And you, the patient, don't know. This is a controlled placebo effect. Well, we're going to see what happens. The only people who know, these are serial numbers. The lead investigators know up here. But at the time of this trial, both me, the nurse or doctor handing it out to you, and you, the patient, we both don't know whether this is the real one or the fake one.
Right. So there can't be any influence from the label or the person handing you the drug. Like, this is going to really help you.
These are accepted as the gold standard of trials. Now, the problem is for the public who tries to read these studies that these, non-physician run wellness clinics put up, they're very different. They're going to give you numbers like 50 people had this and 95% felt pain relief. It's an opinion. Right. It's not a true trial. It's an opinion.
Yeah.
And it's 50 people's not enough either. They're underpowered.
Yeah. So bottom line, it's possible that any of these things could be quite promising. We don't know, and we don't really have enough studies. So I do think that it is kind of an exciting area of research, but I feel that way of many areas of research. One of the things I've been watching my entire career, which I got my MD in 1994, so that says how old I am. But I've been watching stem cells and hoping that stem cells would change a lot of different things. And I thought in the 90s, we're going to see by the time, 30 years from now, we're going to see so much success with stem cells. We have not seen that. That has not happened. There's been 30 years of study, and there just isn't the kind of data to say that it does what we were sort of hoping it did. So there are a ton of things that are exciting about this, and I do hope those studies get done. So is this going to change your practice, the fact that these peptides are going to be able to be compounded, or which one, and if so, which one of these or which ones of these are you most interested in for their potential?
I look at the area of pain medicine. Pain is one of the worst things out there. That's the reason people see us in the first place. My ankle hurts. I have arthritis. My back. Pain is the number one reason the patient sees their doctor. And right now, my belief is we have let a lot of our patients down. We don't have a lot of we have options to try to numb the pain like narcotics, but that's not definitive. We need to do better in offering some kind of therapy that can be regenerative or can repair better. And we need studies for that. The problem with stem cells you mentioned stem cells earlier. I don't want to say they don't work. In fact, a lot of these so-called stem cell clinics are quite profitable. If they totally failed, if it totally didn't work, they wouldn't be so successful. I think what's happening is the way our system...
I just have to interrupt you. There is just many stem cell clinics have been shut down across the country.
Sure.
They are guilty of false advertising because they say it cures incurable diseases. And just a couple weeks ago, there was a case settled here in Seattle for $24 million, a stem cell clinic that killed somebody because they sold him a cure for ALS, which they didn't have.
Those are unscrupulous practices.
Yeah, but there really is no, I don't want people to think that there's data there, because there isn't. And a lot of those stem cell clinics are profitable because they are profiting off of people who have no hope. So I don't want to give that message here, because it's just, I think that it's incredibly irresponsible to be making money from doing those treatments for people who have no hope of cure.
That's a different area, but in terms of ortho are using increasing more biologics. They are using regenerative therapies, and the insurances are covering it now for some of them, not all of them. But I think in the world of pain, we don't have a lot new stuff. We're just worried about pain pathways and numbing and narcotics. But there needs to be more research in the world of stem cells. I think the problem is that the way our system is designed right now is to, like, the standards. We have to have high standards. I get it. We have to have high standards to prove safety and also efficacy. The average small clinic cannot afford it. Only a large mega billion-dollar pharma can do it, and God forbid they're successful, then they hike the price because of the R&D cost that they claim they have spent. I don't want to say that all stem cells don't work, because there are ortho practices.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that just because the stem cell clinics are successful doesn't mean that they're effective or even legal.
No. It doesn't mean they're not effective either, because the FDA does. They are aware of these biologic practices, and they're aware of it. They're aware of these FDA registered labs, and the many ortho clinics are using them. In terms of like orthobiologics, they're using them. But you bring up a very good topic. I have seen a lot of those scams where they actually happen mostly in Mexico and foreign countries, because they have even lax regulation. Yeah, people with terminal conditions from like ALS flying over and getting these treatments done. But anyways, the question is, I guess, will I offer, once these 20 peptides are eventually off of that do not compound list, will I offer them? Right now, my answer is maybe. I don't know. The correct answer is maybe. I mean, at least for me, it's maybe. I kind of want to. I'll probably start it on a very, very, very low scale. Just maybe close friends and family. I would hate to take a risk with the public, because we don't know enough. It's really hard to say. I mean, right now, if you want. You could technically get those 20 compounds legally. You either have to be A, in a research project and you do it through a research grant, or B, compassionate use. Under those, you can get it. So if you're, God forbid, terminal and you have this, condition and you don't have much long to live, yeah, you can get one of those category two, like you can get it legally from that under those grounds. But what's about to happen is, I guess the FDA is going to argue, let the physicians have more control, which, okay, that's fine, but the data is limited on both efficacy and also safety. So I mean, I don't know what will you do? Will you be up?
I won't, because so first of all, I'm not an internist, and we don't really do that kind of medicine in my med spa. We do weight loss, and we do menopause treatment, but I think what would be really interesting is if they could harness the physician-run med spas in the country and do a trial of BPC 157, since that's the most promising one. Like, it'd be really cool to have our own IRB and enroll people.
You can, but it's very expensive. It's aggressively expensive. It's millions,
It's, I left academics for a reason. Okay. So but it would be really interesting to do, because I do think there's an appetite for that, and it wouldn't be hard to get participants. So, I don't know. It's probably not legal to have participants pay for it. But that would be great. I think that would be great to study. Well, I think what we should do is come back after the summer when the rules have changed and things are moving in that direction, and find out what's happening, do an update for people. So Dr. Qureshi, I really appreciate this conversation. Thanks for being on the podcast today.
No, it's a pleasure to be here. This is a juicy topic. I'm glad we could debate it.
If you found this helpful, do me a favor and share it with a friend who's considering any aesthetic treatments. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and drop a comment telling me your biggest takeaway. I actually read them all. Let's keep each other safe and elevate the standards in the med spa industry.